Welcome back to the Rock Your Soul podcast. I'm Nichole Eaton, author of the book Rock Your Soul, The Down-to-Earth Guide to Mastering Your Mind and Intuitive Therapist. And I'm here to remind you of your power and that it's absolutely possible to live a life you're obsessed with. Let me show you how. Hey guys, I'm Nichole Eaton. Welcome back to another episode of the Rock Your Soul podcast. Joining me for the first time in 2023 is my favorite guest host, Heather Maio, two-time gym owner, self-optimization facilitator, and host of the Magic Mindset podcast, along with being the author of Not Another Diet book. This week, we get to dive into what it means to choose yourself, to face your shit. We take a good look at your coping skills and asking the right question, all to bring your energy back inward to change both you, your environment, and set you up to make more powerful, aligned decisions. Are you ready? It is a new year, and I'm so happy to have you back.
I'm so excited to be back.
How has your new year been going?
Well, it's been going great. I guess on paper, it wouldn't look like it's going that great, but I feel good. I feel like we're just getting all of our bullshit out of the way. So I'm sticking with going with great.
I love that. Because I know you've had a little bit of a challenging week with your son's health.
Yeah. And I have another one homesick today. The other one decided to call in today. So I just keep telling myself, we're just getting it all out of the way for a healthy year. And it's funny because last year we all started with the big C word in the beginning of the year and we were fine for the rest of the year. And so this year it's not that. We've just had, stomach bugs, some appendix things going on, but I'm telling myself, okay, well, this is just what we do. And then we have a healthy remaining year. So it's fine.
Well, I love that for you. Yeah. I think it's really hard to be positive sometimes in like the face of challenges. And I feel like this retrograde really, I'm not, I kind of go through like each retrograde and I'm like, yeah, it's okay. Like I've, learned some stuff. And I just feel like this was a really clearing, like even my space and like clearing out my stuff and my closets and my cabinets. And I feel like this big need to just clear things, get rid of them, get through them, get done with them. And I think I feel like this is going to be a great year. Like energetically, I just feel like it's lighter. It has more momentum than a lot of the past years that we've been dealing with. So I think that this is all necessary and important, even maybe some health stuff, but it can be really challenging to stay positive when things aren't going on paper the way you want them to go.
Yeah. But I also feel like it's a lesson in gratitude and it's a lesson in how maybe lucky we are and how much we have grown for two reasons. And we've talked about this before. Like I'm sitting in the ER with my son, and don't get me wrong, was I feeling grateful to be there? No, absolutely not. But then also on the other side, I'm sitting there and I'm not being consumed with, oh my God, how am I going to pay for this? And do I have the means for this to happen? Like it was like the only thing on my mind was just getting my son healthy, which that's a huge blessing, right?
Oh,
and,
for sure.
And it hit me of like, wow, I remember years ago being in Philadelphia with my daughter and she was 4 years old and we had to go to the emergency room because she had some issues going on and just being like terrified because I had no money. I'm like, this is, and so seeing things like that and also just, you realize how grateful you are that we have our health, that it was just something minor, that it's not a big deal. That was the first time I've been overnight aside from childbirth in the hospital. And I've been a parent for 21 years. Like that's pretty freaking good. And so
that is, yeah.
Right. And so it's also nice to think like, okay, well, I'm in a place in my life where I can see my blessings. I'm in a place in a life where I have these blessings. And I'm in a place in my life where I'm not becoming uprooted because of some inconveniences. I'm still okay. And so all of it is kind of a good to me sign of like, yeah, shit can happen. Shit is out of our control, but also we control how we show up in them and we choose how we respond to them. And I really think it's why, the challenges that have arisen for me this year, why they have seemed so minor. It's just because I'm looking at them as minor, right?
Yeah.
So mindset.
Yeah, it is. I love the word uprooted because I think that that's like from my sessions this week, that's like the theme of the year is being able to stay grounded in who you are, being able to be clear about who you are and not letting the external create your internal. Like that is the big message I've gotten in like half of my sessions this like even this morning like I'm just leaving a session and it was like if you can see the challenges coming that are repeated patterns from the past, stand in who you desire to be and who you know yourself to be at the core and not repeat past mistakes, it will be a very blessed year. Like I just feel for a lot of people that there is going to be little challenges that are arising that are duplicates of things you've already dealt with. And it's up to you to say our favorite phrase, I don't do this shit anymore, and to pass that test because then we slide into and I like to think of the resistance around us as like layers of an onion in regards to every layer we pass, we're closer to the outer layer and we're closer to being clear of it. So it's like if I reaffirm my belief that I'm somebody who doesn't do that anymore, and I keep reaffirming that belief that I'm somebody who doesn't do that anymore, eventually we get to the point where I just know that and I don't have to say it and I'm not getting tested in the ways that I have in the past. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense because at that point, you're just not doing it anymore. You
Right,
know,
right.
you look at it, and the only reason that you're even aware of it is because it's almost like the congratulatory pat on your back of, holy shit, I responded to that situation as a completely different person. And just to rewind, you know how I listen to Oprah all the time. She's like the OG for me. And she always
Yeah.
has that the tweetable moment. Yours, we cannot let the external affect the internal is like the tweetable moment. I feel
Yeah.
like of this podcast, even though we're only 5 minutes into it, because that's the goal, right? We'll keep
Yeah.
our internal states calm and collected, even when the external states may be completely out of our control.
Yeah. And that's a big challenge. And so the question of the sessions a lot of times has been how do I do that? How do I do that? Like where do I even start? And I always think of there's a book called Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza, and he compares energy to like everything that you're attached to externally is like branching out of you, like spider webs to that external thing. And the more you focus your energy on all of the external things, the more spider webs you have attached to all these external things. And then it's like puppet strings at some point that's pulling you which way and that way. And the only way to get those strings to really disappear is to bring all of that focus back internally on creating, on designing, on choosing yourself, on clarifying who you are and what you want. And that can create better strings attaching to the things around you instead of it being like this puppeteering external thing. We're rewiring it to come within and then create from the inside out. And I think that's really the only way that we really separate who we've been from who we're going to be is by cutting the strings that are to all the external bullshit and just getting really clear about our internal energy and where we're putting it. And I think like when you said uprooting, that's all I could think about is really grounding within yourself this year to be able to decide and not be victim to.
Yeah. Yeah. And the uprooting, and that's where it comes back to like gratitude. It may not feel good in the moment, but ultimately, like a tree is only going to grow is as its environment lets it. And if the environment is shit, then guess what? We're not going to get pretty leaves. And so sometimes uprooting is the best thing that can happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's like, and I think that comes with when you start to bring your energy internally, like it just acts as a solid foundation for decision making. I think that's like one of the most powerful things you can do for making good aligned decisions is bring back your energy internally instead of letting it be. I know so many people who go from this person to that person. And I asked this person about, this situation. They had this to say, but this person said this. And when we start to get really distracted by all of the people around us, all of the opinions, all of the energies, all of the wants, needs, and desires of everybody else, we lose sense and sight of who we are to be able to make a decision that's not swayed
Yeah.
and not wrong for us, and I think that's like the key is that a lot of times people, and it's not that people don't have great guidance or experience, but they are always going to be coming from a biased place, whether that's fear of things that didn't work out or success of things that did. And you have to be cautious to not get swayed and caught up in that energy to actually make choices that are in alignment for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I read something and I can't remember where I saw it, but I wrote it down because I'm like, this is the goal for me. And it basically just said like, you want to be your own safe space. And I think that can apply to so many things. It applies obviously when we're, seeking validation, when we are shook by other people's opinions. Like for me, I think about it in so much of what I do in my work internally, which brings me to my work, in coaching sessions and with clients, is helping people realize that what they go to comfort them is not, it's not comfortable. We don't want to have those behaviors. We don't want to drink like that. We don't want to eat like that. We don't want to neglect our bodies like that.
Yeah.
But it's a coping technique. And so I think about it in the sense of, I want to be my safe space in the sense that I don't need to numb myself out. I don't need to go to external sources, whether that be a White Claw or Doritos. Like I don't need to do these things because I can be safe in my being in whatever situation I'm in, which again, we don't have control over the external. So what can we do internally to make sure that that can be something available to us?
Yeah. That's such a great point because I think that a lot of people do use these numbing processes, whether it's food, whether it's drink, to distract from their internal space because it's scary in there. Like
we don't know it.
We haven't looked at things in a while. We haven't spent time in there that's not busy and obsessing about everything else. And it's funny that you talk about this because I'm doing dry January currently with one of my friends. And it's going way. I'm not I think we've talked about this numerous times. I'm not ever going to be a sober person. That's not my interest. I enjoy a glass of whatever from time to time. I also don't need it. And I've done series of dry months that have turned into dry 6 months and I don't care, but I also have such a solid core routine within myself of like taking care of myself, attending to myself, doing journaling, doing working out and stuff. And so my friend was having a really, really hard time. She was like, are we done with this yet? Like, what are we doing? And I'm like, you used it as a coping skill.
Yeah.
And now you're not implementing any other coping skills. So what do you expect? Like, if you're not finding a better way to spend time internally or to address the feelings that you were trying to shove down, then, you're going to not see the rewards in the way that I'm seeing the rewards of letting that go out of my life temporarily. So it's just interesting because the things that we numb are really distractions from our internal world. And when we allow ourselves to be a safe space by getting to know ourselves, and I think that's stuff that we don't typically do or talk about as an adult. Like kids are like, we ask kids all the time, like, what's your favorite color? What toys do you like to play with? Who's your best friend? And like, when is the last time as adults we've like asked those questions of like, what do you really like to do? What brings you joy? What lights you up? And that's why I love like question therapy is like, asking people and getting to the root of who they are and what they value. And we don't do that enough. And a lot of times we grow so much in a span of time that we think we still value stuff that we don't. We think we still want stuff that we don't. And so when we give ourselves the chance to get to know who this person is now that we've gone through these experiences and had these things happen, it's altering,
Yeah. And I don't think especially like with the fun and with the play, I am a big believer of, and I can't take credit for this. This originally came to me from Caroline Miss, and basically like the root of stress, the root of anxiety. Well, I don't want to say the root, but stress, anxiety, feelings of worry, feelings of, just those charged negative feelings. They aren't always coming from your to-do list or what your boss asked you to do or your kid's sports schedule. Sometimes they're coming from you haven't expressed yourself as a full being in years. And that's something that really resonates with me. Like way back when little Heather wanted to be on Broadway, like I loved singing. I loved performing. And so like, I still sing all the time at the top of my lungs. There's no way my neighbors don't hear me because like, that is me being in my being, right? That is me expressing. And for other people, it can be, dance or drawing or just listening to music. Like there's all these different ways. And I think we as adults tend to go to things like food and alcohol and weed or whatever because we now describe that as our fun. We put that in the fun bucket of like, this is what I do to unwind. This is what I do for fun. And we don't take it a step further to say like, okay, well, it does feel good. Like we can all acknowledge that. And I'm with you. I never want to be sober. I'm always going to have a place for a mindful relationship with certain alcohols in my life.
Yeah.
It's an enjoyable thing, right? Like that's not the goal. But also like asking ourselves a step further, like, is this really fun to me? Is this really how I want? In some situations, again, yes, like we're not talking about the extremes, but also is it fun the day after? Does it feel fun after I've binged or mindlessly ate in front of Netflix or had 7 White Claws when I said I was only going to have 1 glass of wine, like, so taking like those questions and really asking ourselves, and then, and as silly as it seems, and we tend to have a lot of these conversations about like, well, I know this might sound weird, but, and this is certainly one of them, but like, what is our definition of play? What is our definition of like truly doing something that we enjoy and allowing ourselves to do it? I think tuning into that gets us to the places where we start becoming unshakable, where we start becoming our safe space, where we know what we need to do to process emotions or to feel emotions,
Well, and one of my favorite questions to ask about those things is, what is it about alcohol that I love? Okay, so maybe some people love the feeling of being uninhibited. Maybe some
Yes.
people love the feeling of being really present, and really focused on the now moment. And I think that it's a really great question because then we can replicate it in better, healthier ways. Like we can say, okay, so what also makes me feel free? Or what also makes me feel like myself? Or, oh, I love that I'm really silly when I drink. And how do I incorporate more silliness? How do I make that safe within myself to be more silly? And so it's just a really interesting introspective process when you begin to identify, oh, I gravitate towards these numbing or coping or whatever it is that I'm gravitating towards that's not really serving me. What's a better way to get that same high or that same feeling within myself? And I know some of that feeling isn't attainable in the same
Yeah.
ways, but man, if we really think about the confidence, and most people drink for confidence. There's like studies everywhere that show that people drink to feel confident. So if it's silliness or confidence, how do I replicate that in my body so that I can walk through the world that way all the time?
Yes. Yeah. And using it too to allow ourselves, I think sometimes this is something that I struggled with, and I see it, with the women I'm lucky enough to work with. It's not yet like there's the fun, but it's also sometimes we need to go to the feeling. We need to feel angry. We need to feel sad. We need to feel pissed off, and we numb that out too. And so, like, what can you just being with it alone, is scary enough, but also allowing ourselves to like process through it. Like, I heard basically somebody is describing like ducks fighting, and they get in a fight, and then you see them and they shake their feathers like mad, and then they just swim off completely peaceful. Humans have that same type of response where we need to get that energy. We need to finish the process, right? Like our adrenaline gets spiked up and we don't fully let ourselves come back down. And so how can we just, we don't always need to bottle up the anger. Not saying we need to like pop off on our boss or on our husband, but like for me, I can go throw a med ball against a wall and get out of that. Or I have a really hard time touching into feelings of sadness. I am somebody who I don't get emotional. I don't cry. And I'm not saying that as a brag because it's a fault. It's something I'm trying to work with. And so for me, I can use music that taps me into that emotion that will allow me to have that like emotional release that I know I need, instead of like carrying it, with us, like using things to figure out, okay, what emotion am I feeling right now? And how can I shed this emotion from my body in doing it?
Yeah, I think that is such an important step. And as we're talking about like this retrograde and clearing and stuff, like we're also talking about getting rid of old fucking outdated emotions. And that means facing them. That
Yeah.
means sitting with them. That means writing it out. That means talking it out with a therapist, a coach, or whatever. or just out loud in your car and just getting out of your body. Like people don't understand that trapped energy and heavy emotions don't just get override with positive thinking. They don't. They have to be released from the body, whether that's through a great workout, through song and connecting with song lyrics, or like physically writing out, verbalizing it, getting it out of your body. It is energy, and energy will stay where we do it. I have, a friend who talks about how she always like shoves down her energy, and she's like, you just push it down. And I'm like, no, you can't do that. It will catch up to you in the worst way possible. You can't do that. That's not how emotions work. Just because you felt something you don't want to feel, you don't get to pretend it's not there. You have to process it. You have to bring it through. And when you get to that point where you can say, fuck, that really hurt.
Yeah.
That really upset me. That made me feel so embarrassed or ashamed or whatever. Like when you can have those honest moments, you're moving the energy. You're also clarifying what you no longer want or what you no longer want to feel or what you're no longer willing to deal with or do. And I think that addressing and working and progressing and processing through those emotions is one of the most powerful things you can do in terms of your healing, in terms of your future and your future self, and in terms of your relationship. Because whether you think that those shoved down emotions or those put aside emotions don't matter just because you're not expressing them, it is leaking out of your aura at every chance it gets. It's leaking out in passive aggressiveness. It's leaking out in resentment. Like it's there underlying everything all of the time, whether you address it or not. So you might as well fucking get it out of your system so that you can have better, healthier relationship, not only with yourself, but with other people.
Yeah. Especially the people closest to us, right? Like
Yeah.
it's that, if you don't, you're going to bleed on people who never cut you. It's that whole thing that is, God, have I seen that in, my recent going on right now with some situations. And it's unfortunate because quite often the people we end up bleeding on are the people we love the most. Right. And so it's like, that's something I try to be really, really cognizant of for that reason. And like you said, it's never fun to have a conversation with somebody and express like that really hurt me. But once that boundary is set, you really don't have to touch it again for the most part. I think that we kind of forget that. And you mentioned writing it out. I think that's probably one of the most underutilized ways to process things that nobody has to see. We can write the angry email. Just make sure you hit delete. Like,
don't send it.
Right. Please. No, or maybe do if that's right. But whatever, like whatever you feel, whatever like little baby step you're willing to take it, because it is going to help not only you, but it's going to help the people you love and care about as well.
Yeah. And one of my like favorite reminders is suppression is depression. Like when you don't get that energy out, it's going to feel bad. And that having those conversations or even just honestly being like, God, there's such an issue around being honest when it comes to healing. We like to be like, oh no, it's fine. Like, I'm good with that. Like, we like to be the cool girl. We have cool girl syndrome, and a lot of us is like recovering people pleasers, right? We have the not wanting to rock the boat, not wanting to hurt people's feelings. And we can just take it because I'd rather, have my feelings hurt and deal with it because I'm emotionally intelligent than have, whatever stories we tell ourselves about how capable we are of handling it all. When we start to suppress how we really feel about things, we start to lose touch with that inner person and inner being because we're lying to ourselves so much. So when we start to lose touch with that inner being, then we can't make decisions for shit because none of them are in alignment and we're not saying the things. And the more detached we feel from that inner space, the worse it feels. The more sad, the more anxious, the more unstable, insecure, any of those words that we don't want to be using, you're going to feel the further away from yourself you get. So if in that space, you can sit down and write out all of your very honest, unfiltered thoughts and give yourself permission to do that, there is massive healing from that. Massive.
And it stops us from the trap of this is just the way I am. Like in quotation.
Oh,
right? I get it.
Such bullshit. Such bullshit.
The girls who get it. Like I never, and I've been that person, but like, people who are sarcastic, that's pain. 99% of the time, sarcasm is bitchiness described as a joke because you have poor communication skills, or
Yeah.
you want to hurt somebody indirectly because you are hurt. And so you like people who like do those little digs like that. They're Eckhart Tolle is he's my beginner. Like that was the first book I ever read when I got into it. So pain body, which I used to make so much fun of when my mom said pain body to me. I'm like, what the hell? But now I'm like, that's
That makes
sarcasm.
sense. Yeah.
Right. Sarcasm is a pain body coming
Mhm.
through, or somebody who's just, like naturally bitchy or naturally anxious or whatever, or any of those things we can put in that bucket of this is just the way I am. And it's like, no, 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 that's not the way you are. That's the way you've trained yourself to be, which is a good thing because it means you can train yourself to be different if you
Mhm.
choose it. It's just, are we going to choose it? Right.
Are we going to choose it?
Yeah.
That's like in circling back to the sessions I had today, and honestly, the big message is, are you choosing yourself? Are you choosing yourself with every activity you do? Are you choosing yourself with who you're being? Are you choosing yourself with every decision you make in regards to who you let in your life, what you allow in your life, what kind of situations you allow yourself be a part of? Like, are you choosing yourself? And so that if you can come back at the core of everything. And one of my favorite things to do is put my hand on my heart when I'm not sure about something or I feel really out of body or I don't know, anything where I feel like not myself. If I put my hand on my heart, it's like a direct portal. And I heard this thing the other day is that our heart has brain cells. It has like neural cells in it. So that our brain and our heart actually can be on different wavelengths. And our goal is to have heart brain coherence, is that honoring our heart space allows it to sync up with our neural space in a way that creates really powerful experience. I think that was just Joe Dispenza. But anyway, our heart has its own dialogue really and owns cellular memory and owns neural cells in it. So we can actually put our hand over our heart and it kind of zooms in on that cellular network of past experiences. So I like to just do it and just have those little mantras I repeat to myself of like, how am I doing today? Like, and it just feels so good. Like it's just a different feeling and it's a I love a soul recognition moment and a soul recognition feeling. And anytime I have a client who feels away from themselves, we put our hand over our heart 1st and we just check in and we just see how we're doing. And we give like compassion and love to our heart.
Yeah. It's like a big breath of fresh air after you've
Yeah.
been holding your breath a little too long. Like you forget how good it feels to just come into your body
To
again.
choose yourself.
Mhm.
That is one singular moment where it's choosing yourself. It's paying attention to yourself. It's bringing that attention inward so you can create the outward. Like it's a really, really beautiful moment to connect with yourself, to grow yourself, to find that gratitude for yourself, for your experiences, and to get honest. Because I think, again, if we're thinking about, okay, my head is overriding it, this experience by making it less than it was, even though I'm feeling it in my heart, like this is a great place where we can create that coherence between our head and our heart and create a space where we're getting honest with ourselves unjudgmentally, non-judgmentally, and opening up to something really incredible because this is again the clearing away the shit that no longer serves you as part of growing into your future self for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, it allows us an opportunity to, I know we said like sometimes you need to have that conversation or you need to write something down, and that's absolutely true and it's absolutely valid. But also sometimes it's this equivalent of like seeing a paper on your countertop and throwing it away. Like sometimes we just need to take that time to remind ourselves, like, it's not that big of a deal. I don't want to. I do feel affected. This conversation did trigger me because it brought up something from my past, or I was reminded of a situation, because that's usually what it is, right? Like we feel something that we're viewing, from the lens of our past, not the lens of the reality that's really happening. And so sometimes the process of moving through that emotion is just simply allowing ourselves to acknowledge that we felt that emotion, acknowledge that it's a leftover remnant, and we're good. That's not how I want to respond to it right now. And so we can literally just throw that paper away, or sweep those crumbs out the floor and be done with it. So it doesn't become something else that we're holding on to, another victim story of, woe is me. No. I'm just gonna just, okay, thank you. Like now I'm reminded again of how I don't want to feel, how I don't want to show up in my life and moving on.
Yeah, especially if that's something that keeps coming up. If it keeps coming up, that's a perfect thing, is to be like, honor it, release it.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. I think this is a really powerful conversation that I definitely know some people in the audience, and the listeners needed to hear today. So I'm really glad that we were able to talk about this stuff, because this is like the harder stuff sometimes, is we talk about a lot of light, a lot of manifesting, a lot of trusting, but we don't talk as much about like working through the bullshit to get through it, to be able to do the things that we talk about, to be able to manifest in a way that feels really good, and to be able to trust God in a way that feels good, and to be able to step into your best version of yourself. Like, it's hard to do that if you've got a bunch of shitty old energy laying around.
Yeah. We have to make the foundation in order for the other stuff to be easy. And it's like, that's not the sexy work of building a house, right? Like you just look and you're like, well, that's a hole in the ground. No, thank you very much. But it's also arguably the most important.
Yeah. Yep. I would say that this work is the foundational work that will help you create like this year that we've talked about, that can be really incredible if you can pass these tests of old stuff and saying no to that, and choosing better for yourself. I think that's the key. I love conversations with you. It always like brings up things even just that I really needed to hear too. And I'm always so grateful for these conversations.
It's all mutual. You know that.
Where can people connect with you?
Heather.Maio on both Instagram and TikTok. And my website is just Heather Maio. You can find my podcast there, my book there. You can find it all there.
Perfect. Well, thank you again for a wonderful start to the new year. I think this is going to be really good energy for people launching into this next week.
Yes, absolutely. Onward and upward.
I'm working on growing this podcast to its full potential this year. If you feel this was valuable, I'd love for you to share or leave me a positive review. Share with somebody who needs to hear it, screenshot and tag me on Instagram, and make sure you keep an eye out for my latest book, Rock Your Comeback, The Down-to-Earth Guide to Reclaiming Your Power. Hoping to have it in your hands soon. I'd love to connect with you, so make sure to give me a follow on Instagram or TikTok at NicholeEaton.xo. Thanks for listening to the Rock Your Soul podcast. I hope you're feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to take on the world. Now go step back into your power. The world's been waiting for you.